So we give all this stuff freely to nonprofits and startups. So if a nonprofit needed the green screen, they could come use it. We don't charge anything for that. If the nonprofit wants to come and generate some content around their message, they can use the podcasting suite. This thing is mobile. We do live streams for like we've done it for GTech, we've done it for Tech Shop. We've just picked the whole apparatus up, the whole thing up, and take it and go someplace wherever a big event is happening.
So do you like live, it's like a live radio broadcast essentially?
Yeah, so it's just a podcast, right? Like if you ever watch like the Joe Rogan podcast or like a lot of the comedians have them now, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. So it goes out as something you download as opposed to something that you stream.
Either or. So we could be streaming this right now. We typically don't, just because we do a little post on the back end, like color correction and things like that to make it look nicer.
Okay.
But we do it live streaming sometimes, or it just goes right to YouTube and lives there, and you could watch it as it's happening. But the value for like an organization, whether you're a nonprofit or a startup, is its content, right?
Yeah.
And content that's associated correctly with your organization helps you with your search engine results and your SEO and that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
So tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, my name is Henry Pyatt. I'm the Small Business and Redevelopment Manager in the Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment in the Mayor's Office. Mayor Peduto created the Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment in January and February. The idea being that Pittsburgh has experienced a resurgence in many different neighborhoods over the past 10 to 20 years. Think Lawrenceville, East Liberty, places like that. And then there are other neighborhoods that have not been able to avail themselves of the same tools that allowed that growth and facilitated that growth in those places.
Like Allentown.
Like Allentown. So the idea is that you know, the mayor decided that instead of having a bunch of politicians and those kind of people around him all the time, he wanted to have a bunch of practitioners around him all the time. So I've been working for community development corporations for the last 6 or so years. My colleague, Kyle Cintalopoli, is the housing manager. He's been working at the URA, figuring out how to finance complicated but worth doing projects, you know, building housing and in some cases places for businesses as well. Betty Cruz is my colleague for faith-based and nonprofit initiatives. She's been helping people build playgrounds and empowering immigrants for most of her professional career. And then my colleague, Cosette Coran-Overton, is an education researcher. And so she is helping to figure out how to improve our school district and help charters and the school district work better together. So I was really stoked on that idea, you know, because it's that basic principle of like, no, we don't want a bunch of like policy wonks that have been doing this for 20 years and are just thinking about sound bites. We just want people that want to fix the problems. You know, political knowledge be darned. Let's just do it. And so I was really excited to take the opportunity to be a part of that team. And so now the idea here is this is kind of our opening salvo for small business stuff, right? Like we're coming to Allentown and we're saying, hey, everybody, you might not have heard of any of these people before. You might not have heard of the SBA or the Small Business Development, the SBDC, or you know, the URA's facade program, but we're going to tell you about it right here in your neighborhood. Come on, walk in, meet the people that do it, meet the people that make the rules, and know that it's here for you too.
Yeah, and there's such a gap, right? Like we flyered for this event. We went around to Brookline and some of Washington, and people just don't know that there's a facade grant, and people just don't know that there's resources at Pitt and Duquesne that can really help them.
Yeah, and a lot of times free or heavily subsidized.
Oh yes, yeah, and it's such valuable stuff. So, so Peduto is really kind of seems to be aggressively going after these kinds of things, right? Like he seems to like have a warm spot in his heart for this kind of work.
Absolutely, he does. He gets it. I mean, I've known the man for quite a long time, and it was, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago that I was a college undergrad studying city planning, learning about transit, learning about business district redevelopment, and I'd see him, and we'd have late night conversations about, this is exactly what's wrong, and this is exactly the policy that's impeding it, and now he's the mayor, and so he's just waving his hand and getting rid of these BS policies and making sure that things make a lot more sense and run a lot faster. I mean, another thing that impressed me a lot is my colleague, one of the, you know, when you're doing community revitalization, you work with, in Pittsburgh it's the Bureau of Building Inspection, they call it different things in different cities, it doesn't really matter. The people that regulate buildings, right? You need them, because if you're here and you're doing a great job with your building here at the hardware store, making it look good, bringing a lot of activity to the street, paying your taxes, all that stuff, and then your neighbor is a speculator just sitting around with a bunch of buildings that look like crap and the doors are blown out and, you know, vagrants are coming in and out, it dissuades your customers.
It does, yeah. So can I ask you a serious question? How many clones of Bill Peduto are there? Because I remember like Bill Peduto must have been pulling like 20-hour days at some point in his career.
I think he still is.
Like everywhere I go would be Bill Peduto. It's unbelievable, like his time on task.
I think he is. We're not clones. The idea is that...
so like orphan black kind of thing going on?
I mean, we have similar ethics. We definitely do. I mean, my colleague Laura is upstairs from the Department of Innovation and Performance. She's like my colleague, my peer for open data. And we're all extremely dedicated to our jobs because we were all into these fields. And that's kind of the idea, right? Like instead of Bill Peduto, who's focused on all things Pittsburgh and being in every event, being supportive of everything that's worth being supported, we are able to focus in on our particular subject areas and with a similar ethic have a sharper focus and provide a little more direct service because there's more of us.
So what's coming down the pipe for, say, the next year and a half? Like, what are the big things you guys are going to be working on that you think merit people's attention?
Well, I mean, I'm really excited about the rest of this series of small business resource fairs. We're going to do 5 more. They're all in neighborhoods that have been kind of devoid of some resources. We're talking Homewood, Garfield, the West End, Manchester, California, Kirkbride, and the like, in order to make sure that everyone all over the city who hasn't been able to use these tools gets it and can use these tools. We're working on a lot of different stuff. Personally, with College in Delapoli, we're trying to pursue Promise Zone designation, which is a federal designation that gives us kind of a gold star on any federal grant application that anyone does within the Promise Zone for the next 10 years. And the way we do that is by showing the feds that we have a coordinated strategy and that all of the folks doing different programming, whether it's about crime reduction or business district improvement or improving a housing stock in a particular neighborhood, are working in concert with each other. And that's a big part of what the Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment is attempting to do. We're trying to get in touch with everybody within our field, within the whole city, and then try to bring that together and make sure that it's coordinated in a way that makes sense. Because we've done a lot of stuff before where it's like, let's address the youth unemployment problem over here, and let's address the housing program problem over there, and let's address the education problem over there.
It's fragmented.
Right, and then all these programs are worthwhile and they all have a decent impact, but you know, the sum, how does that phrase go?
Sum total.
The sum of the parts is greater than the whole, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same thing. You know, when you're addressing multiple problems that exist in one place at the same time, you can realize a much greater impact.
So when you look at a neighborhood like Allentown, right? So you know, we have a really good relationship with our developer, and we have a really good relationship with our CDCs. We have a really good relationship with the URA. What do you see as something that we should be doing as the hardware store to improve this neighborhood, to move it forward, to take it in the direction that it needs to go?
Well, there's 2 things. You got to focus within and focus without. So within, you guys have a great network and a great team together. And the way that you build upon that is by continuing to make more friends, continuing to invite more people into the fold, continuing to find people that may have already been in this neighborhood for many generations and have a good entrepreneurial mind, and making sure to connect them with the resources that you've been able to avail yourselves of, so that the empty storefronts next door and up the street and down the street get filled in. But more importantly, not just get filled in with Panera Breads and whatnot, get filled in by your neighbor around the corner who had some great idea, you know?
Who's invested locally, right?
Yeah, and I'm really excited because I know that the Hilltop Alliance, or the Hilltop CDC, gets that, and they're trying to get you guys a corridor manager or a Main Street manager.
That's right. Yeah. And that all hinges on the budget, right?
That's true. Budget. It's true. You know,
so email your senator, your state senator.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think it's 2138, but basically it's the neighborhood assistance program, and we need to make sure that every single person in state government understands how darn important that program is to supporting all the good work places like the Hilltop CDC are doing.
So just to kind of frame that for anybody who's listening, right? So Allentown would get a business district manager, an actual permanent employee whose job it is to improve the business district here, to fill those stores, fill those empty storefronts, to find the connections, to connect people to URA money, connect people to loans, to Bridgeway Capital.
Right, help them understand the local market,
and
help them negotiate
all
landlords.
Hinges on the state budget's passing of this one little chunk that allocates tax credits, right?
Yep, they're tax credits. The way it works is that an organization like a CDC will go find a big company that has to pay Pennsylvania corporate taxes, and they'll say, hey, if you give us, and this is how it usually works, the amounts can change a little bit. If you give us $50,000 a year to support our operating costs, which is like, you know, the cost of one moderately paid employee, because if you pay somebody 35 grand, it costs like 50 grand to do it.
Right.
Yeah. to do this work, and then in exchange they get an 80% tax credit. So they give you 50 grand, and then they get, I'm not great at math, but they get, what would that be? Half of 80, they get 40 grand off on their taxes.
Right.
And that way the state is only contributing essentially 40 grand because it's lost tax revenue, but they're getting 50 grand in actual dollars into the pockets of somebody who's going to generate much more economic impact than that. Because if they're doing a good job, they're bringing in all these new businesses, they're all paying taxes.
That's right.
So
and social good, right? And actually building, and it's community boots on the ground. So like a neighborhood like Allentown or even McKees Rocks. I know the guys at the McKees Rocks CVC, like they've done such great work in the last 2 years, and without this kind of funding, they're just not going to exist.
They're going to have to close.
They're going to be done.
And the worst part is, it's not just that let's say the program goes away for 2 years, right? Because that's what they're talking about.
Right. And
then it comes back. Well, it's not like McKees Rock CDC just pops back up at the end of that, and whoop, we're ready. Okay, we're here. I was just in suspended animation, not eating and feeding my children for those 2 years.
It doesn't happen that way.
No. We have to rebuild. All these people are going to go find jobs somewhere else because they need to feed the families, and then we have to rebuild that whole thing from scratch.
And that took 5 years to build to get to that point.
Exactly.
And so you're really looking at a 7 to 10 year cessation of any kind of development. It's just not.
And that's 5 years in a city like Pittsburgh with decent foundation resources.
That's right.
Talk about the rest of the state where they don't have all the resources we do. Yeah.
Well, Henry, thanks for talking, man. Thanks for the great work you guys do, and we think Bill Peduto is the bomb. So we're very excited that he's out and about doing
not just because he's my boss.
Yeah. Well, he's not my boss, so I have no reason to say that. So he does a good job. We're excited. So thanks, and we'll invite you back if you ever want to talk about anything else.